tut jeder seinen anderen Grund. Ich muss was drücken, wenn ich nicht aufgeregt bin, ich muss was drücken, weil ich aufgeregt bin.
Der Ausdruck ist nicht uninteressant. Der Glasdruck, das ist ja geprintet irgendwie, aber die Wellgeprinte wahrscheinlich.
Schaut sehr cool aus.
Ja. Die ist mir modern entsteht.
Ja. Ist hier ein bisschen alt da.
Ja, ja.
Naja,
Genau, nach einer Stunde kommt der mit dem Stift.
Wie ist das?
also eine Stunde
Ja.
wird jetzt. Und was sollen wir uns nur zusammenreißen? So weniger machen. Wir fotografieren dann noch der Stunde.
Ja,
Beim Telefon macht es ja keinen. Ist sehr wurscht.
Hereby I open this academic ceremony at Maastricht University. My name is Ton de Groei. I am the pro-rector of the ceremony and the chair of the degree committee. First of all, I would like to welcome Mrs. Alexandra Kolm. She will defend in public her academic thesis, which is called Transcending Time, Space and Culture, International Online Collaboration Competencies in Health Professions Education. Welcome all members of the degree committee, and in particular we have 3 supervisors and 2 of them are here. Professor Jascha de Nooijer, she is Professor of Interprofessional Teaching and Learning at Maastricht University. Dr. Janneke Frambach, she is Associate Professor at the School of Health Professions Education at Maastricht University. And the one who we really miss is Professor Jeroen van Merijenboer, who passed away 2 years ago. So he is the other supervisor. Welcome the audience in the aula, and I welcome also all followers of the live stream. Mrs. Kolm, may I invite you to give a summary of your thesis, and I wish you success in the coming hour. The floor is yours.
Yeah, dear Pro-Rector, dear committee members, dear colleagues, family and friends, I sincerely appreciate your presence, whether in person or virtually, as I present the summary of my research on transcending time, space and culture, international online collaboration competencies in health professions education today. I will walk you through my chosen methodology, my research results, and the implications for research and practice. And following the presentation, I look forward to engage in a stimulating discussion with the committee. Transcending refers to overcoming the boundaries that are imposed by transcending time, space, culture, and that are inherent in any international online collaboration. Its potential lies in the connection of professionals, of researchers, of students from across the globe to share knowledge, to solve pressing health challenges, and without the constraints that borders or distance bring with it. But it is not as simple as connecting computers. It's about connecting minds and expertise, and it comes with challenges. Transcending time requires coordinated meetings across time zones, and that can limit physical and social interaction. That may lead to feelings of isolation and disconnectedness, and that, of course, can impose the results of international online collaboration. The reliance on transcending space limits also physical meetings and social interaction, and limited availability for interaction can cause real-time delays, and that also cause delays in decision-making. The reliance on technology presents another barrier because competency in using methods like meeting tools, collaborative software, data sharing platforms is no longer optional, it's a necessity. And unfortunately, those who struggle coming up with the competency using all these tools may find it harder to contribute in global virtual teams, and that can hinder team success. Transcending also needs awareness, since culture influences how we use technology. So while some team members prefer video calls, others may prefer only text-based communications or emails. And awareness and understanding these preferences might help clarifying this from the beginning. And language barriers are further complicate interaction, and while this applies to any international collaboration, it is special because informal talks or may help to overcome these language barriers, and they are again limited in global virtual teamwork. As I mentioned it already, international online collaboration is a central concept of my research. But what does it actually mean? Because we did not find any definition of it in the literature. So we defined, by conducting study 1 and study 2, a definition, and defined international online collaboration as a social structure where at least 2 people cross national, ethnical, linguistic, and/or cultural borders to create or achieve a shared goal that would not have been achievable alone or individually. And of course, it involves interaction and goes beyond dividing tasks. And because the team members work in different locations, in different organizations, or even in different time zones, the communication coordination needs to be predominantly on electronic communication media. And while I've now introduced the challenges and the definition of international online collaboration, I now continue with presenting the problems and the gaps that I wanted to address with my research. So the core problem that we saw was that while we see the need for global virtual teamwork, especially because I started my PhD just before COVID-19, we are not adequately prepared to handle the challenges that international online collaboration inherits. It needs specific skills due to the added complexity that virtuality, language, and culture brings with it. And existing teamwork models were developed for face-to-face collaboration and are not tailored to the specific challenges that we have in international online collaboration. And a lack of competency in international online collaboration may lead to frustration of team members that could be preventable, and it should be a joy and fruitful and not a big challenge. So we have a gap in understanding what competencies are important for health professions educations working in a virtual and global team. And our systematic review revealed that we do need a comprehensive competency framework to be able to design and design learning interventions and prepare future health professionals for this global virtual teamwork. And additionally, of course, we do not know how to learn, to teach, and to evaluate the needed competencies in international online collaboration. And I will now continue to present how we were aiming to fill these gaps. So we conducted in total 4 studies. First, we conducted a systematic literature review where we searched for the competencies that have already been described, teaching and learning interventions, evaluation methods to see what competencies are important and to understand that. And based on the findings of this systematic literature review, we invited experts, academic and field experts, to answer or to ask them how they would frame a comprehensive competency framework based on the findings we had in the systematic review. So it came quite naturally to conduct a 3rd study that was a design-based research study to see or understand how can we learn and teach international online collaborations competencies and how can we evaluate them. So we developed a scale during this study that we finally in our 4th study validated. We calculated the psychometric properties of the scale to see how we can probably evaluate the competencies in future international online collaboration competencies. So as I have now outlined the gaps, our approach and methods in filling these gaps, I will now continue to present the findings of my thesis. So first key finding is a comprehensive competency framework on international online collaboration. You see the core of it on the screen. It's domain-specific competencies. And these competencies are related to job expertise and technical knowledge. And to collaborate effectively, professionals must not only understand their own fields, but be also able to transcend or apply their expertise to other areas beyond their primary field. And usually this expertise or competence is the core why we meet for international online collaboration, because we usually want to tackle complex problems. Our second domain, very important, is information and communication technology. That refers to competencies in using digital tools, communication networks, data, use that efficiently, being aware of data, securing tools, and a competency for that would be learning and creatively using the rapidly changing technological tools. Third, international and intercultural domain focuses on the ability to communicate and interact effectively in an international and intercultural team, and it requires sensitivity, reflection, and openness towards different perspectives, ensuring that interactions are respectful and meaningful. An example here would be showing awareness of own cultural biases and how they affect own thinking. Communication and language competencies, our 4th domain, involve linguistic skills for expressing oneself, understanding others, and being aware of nonverbal communication as well. An example here would be showing awareness of social customs and nonverbal signs like gestures and facial expressions. Collaboration domain highlights the importance of working together to achieve a shared goal, a shared understanding of objectives and problem solving that would not be possible alone. An example here is considering the needs of other people and wishing to understand them. And last but not least, management organizational domain refers to the competencies that are necessary to achieve a goal effectively, and that includes time management, leadership, coordination, and self-reflection. A competency here would be showing awareness of one's own strengths and weaknesses. And study 1, study 2 contributed to finding or achieving this international online collaboration competencies framework. And in a third step, we implemented or used this framework to design a learning intervention, which is our second key finding. So we designed and evaluated an interprofessional collaborative online international learning intervention, a quite long word for what we did. And it resulted in design principles to foster the researched competencies. So we had a sample of health profession students from 4 different European countries, coming from dietetics, nursing, occupational therapy, social work, and physiotherapy. And they worked in international and interprofessional teams to come up with a shared therapy plan for the virtual client. And what we found was that students don't collaborate simply by being in a group. So we had 2 design cycles where we needed then to integrate collaborative scripts that were very important to support the collaboration. And we designed an authentic task, like I said, a virtual patient that was acted from a lecturer in one of the participating universities. And that helped to focus on an authentic task that is relevant for the work field of the students as well. And it was nice to see that even though this intervention was only 4 days worth 2 ECTS, it showed that we had significant effects, improvements in self-perceived international online collaboration competencies before and after the intervention. And that was measured, as I mentioned briefly in the introduction, by a self-developed scale. And that leads me to our third key finding. A validated questionnaire on international online collaboration competencies. And nice results. It was valid and reliable in the given context of international interprofessional online collaboration competencies. We conducted exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis, and this analysis approved 5 of the 6 domains. If you remember the framework, we had 6 domains, but domain-specific at the very center cannot be just covered by a general questionnaire. So the scale itself is on 5 competency domains. It is a short informative measurement including 26 competencies, and it's transferable to different contexts, because it's not profession-specific. To summarize, our research provides students an opportunity to learn and experience the richness of cultural diversity and technological tools. It prepares them for future careers, and it allows access to international experience even though they are not physically mobile. It is helpful for educators to benefit from practical guidance on how you could design a learning intervention and apply the validated scale. And for professionals, it's relevant because the identified key competences can be an important source for reflection and development of your own personal competences in international teamwork. And last but not least, for researchers, it provides a nice foundation for further research, and that brings me to my last slide. Future directions to do research, we see, of course, a few points for what we could do in the future, like exploring the predictive validity of the scale across diverse settings, meaning if you have good international online collaboration competences, does that contribute to being more competent, having better outcomes? We do need a 360-degree evaluation in addition to self-assessment. That's something what future studies should cover. And we have not searched if generational differences influence the scale and the usefulness of the learning intervention. And in closing, this research provides a solid foundation for understanding, fostering, and evaluating international online collaboration competencies in health professions education. And I would like to dedicate a couple of seconds in memory of my first supervisor, Professor Dr. Jeroen van Marienboer, who contributed substantially to this research and my development as a researcher. So thank you very much, and I give now back the words to the pro-rector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kolm, for a clear summary of your thesis. The opposition will be opened by the chair of the assessment committee, Professor Desiree Joosten den Brink, and she is Professor of Learning and Assessment at Maastricht University.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, I've read your thesis with great interest, and I'd like to congratulate you and your supervisors with this nice result. Very nice dissertation with a very nice cover. So it's well structured and has a nice build-up in a diverse set of studies. Very good. And also 2 of the studies are already published in well-known journals, so very good. For me, the topic was fairly new, so it led also to some great new insights for me personal, so thank you. But I'm not here for the compliments today, but gladly take the opportunity to ask you a few questions about your dissertation. And I'd like to start with some concepts. And the main concepts of your study is the International Online Collaborative Competencies, the IOCC, and the Interprofessional Collaborative Online International Learning, the module that you developed. So the ICOL is in this context the method, the learning path, to promote the international online collaborative competencies, while the IOCCs are the competencies themselves. And I was wondering, so the interprofessional part is slipping in your study. It's not directly defined, and I was wondering why the interprofessional part is added to your study, and why is that part also important for your research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your kind words and for your question. Actually, it was really kind of a research flow where interprofessional education just came in at a very, very good moment, I would say. Because at the moment, at the time when I was about to conduct a design-based research, I had a research team in my university that was in need of shifting an interprofessional learning intervention from face-to-face to online due to COVID-19. And they were challenged by that, and they remembered my thesis, my research topic, and asked me to step in and contribute in shifting the online, the face-to-face intervention to an online intervention. And that was the moment when interprofessional education stepped in my research project. And I was very happy about that because if you remember the definition of international online collaboration, then you probably have in mind that the center of it is creating or achieving a shared goal. And that was very clear in the interprofessional educational domain that this should focus on a patient, on a client, and that the students should create or achieve something together that they could not do individually. And that was the moment where we then decided that a therapeutic plan in the interprofessional, international teams would be the heart of the international online collaboration. And that was a very smooth development, I have to say. I was very lucky.
Yes, and I see it back in your training, the interprofessional part, but I don't really see it in the framework of the competency framework. And also the results of the training had positive effects on communication and language and on international and intercultural aspects. But the effect on interprofessional behavior and interprofessional behavior is also not mentioned in the competence. Also the effect on interprofessional behavior is less convincing. It's not measured. It's measured in a different way. How do you? What would you like to improve or change in the next step to have more attention to that interprofessional part of the international collaboration?
Yeah. Well, I saw the interprofessional aspect a little bit more in the heart of the framework, like in the domain-specific competencies. Even though we had an interprofessional cohort as dietitians, physiotherapists, etc. So, what would be beneficial in terms of an interprofessional aspect? I would say working on the assessment as such would be beneficial, because we had in study 3 self and the evaluation of IOCCs before the intervention, after the intervention. The students evaluated on interprofessional behaviors on their selves and on their peers. And third, they had reflective diaries. And it was not, what we could not manage was to design it as a complete thing, because as you have observed, because we just didn't have the time and the resources to work further on it. And we could not add an additional evaluation, because for 4 days we already had a lot for the students.
Do you have some ideas to add it to the questionnaire as a specific part?
No, I would not add it to the IOCC's questionnaire. I would stick to evaluating the interprofessional competences on their own, like the behaviors. But I would say that adding a reflective, more comprehensive assignment would be very beneficial, and additional debriefing sessions within the international and interprofessional teams, but also in the monoprofessional teams. So I think that would be very beneficial for further evaluating and designing the intervention for future ICOILs.
Okay, I'd like to discuss this further with you, but I see my time is over. No?
You have time for
one
question.
small question. Okay,
Yes.
then I make a little jump to an aspect that is in the questionnaire, and that's the intercultural collaboration. And international intercultural competencies include the ability to communicate and act effectively and appropriately in intercultural situations, based on sensitivity, reflection, and openness. So that's the definition in your thesis. What do you see as the key difference then between interprofessional collaboration and intercultural collaboration? And why should you intercultural collaboration is in the questionnaire and interprofessional is not in the questionnaire?
Yeah, not an easy question.
Sorry, I had some time.
No, don't worry.
But you may give a short answer.
Well, of course, there is an overlap. Culture in terms of professional identities and in terms of intercultural, I think there are quite a few overlaps. But I think handling it as separate. Well, the one thing is the collaboration that influences the outcome, and the outcome in performance could be the interprofessional behaviors. I think these two ways of approaching it really benefit each other, and that's why I would not integrate it, because then it would not be generalizable and transferable to other contexts anymore. And that was a focus we really wanted to have, that the framework and the scale as such can be transferable to any other professional background or context that we have not yet studied, but that's an area of future research.
Okay, thank you very much. I give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you, Professor Joosten ten Brinke. The next opponent is Professor Hendrik Daxler. He is Professor of Learning Analytics at Open University in the Netherlands, and he is Professor of Educational Technologies at the Goethe Institute in Frankfurt in Germany. Professor Daxler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Esteemed candidate, congratulations for this timely thesis and well-structured, as my colleague already said. It was a pleasure to read this, especially as we share some challenges. I find your program really important, so for global health programs and similar things. But I made my own experience with organizing a conference in Frankfurt we did it 2019, and the conference should have taken place in March 2020. And as you remember, March 2020 was the moment that basically everything, in the beginning people said, oh, we cannot come and this is shut down and this is shut down, and we had 200,000 euros contracts in the ground for people to come. We expected 600 people. And then luckily there was the moment that the German government said, well, we are in a lockdown, and that means all contractual things are diminished. But then we need to organize from this face-to-face conference an online conference in 3 weeks.
Wow.
We survived. We survived,
Well done.
and it was the beginning of another PhD of mine, researching the value of virtual conferences as a space for professional development.
Nice.
And well, you can imagine that I have some things that I'm really interested in. But one thing that really, that irritates me is we see all these challenges with the virtual collaboration. So we did research in this. We showed that inclusiveness was much better with online conferences. We could bring in people from Africa. They could easily connect. They did not have the high costs to come to us. We could also see that the knowledge exchange worked very well because people could attend 2 sessions at once, having 2 computers. And so there was a lot of arguments why these virtual conferences are really valuable, but at the end, 3 years later, I see me and my colleagues traveling again to all the places and looking for the face-to-face moments rather than taking the efficient and powerful virtual space. And that really resonates nicely with your proposition 9 that I would ask your paranymph to read out loudly to us.
Despite the shift towards international online collaboration, physical meetings continue to serve as vital hubs for collaboration, innovation, and team building.
Yeah, exactly. So what is in there? I'm wondering, is it my age people? Is it young people? So why we are not can make this more, or how can we take advantage of these online virtual collaboration? And what are the things that we need to consider? And I was wondering if you could help me out with this question that really drives me around.
Yeah. Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your kind words and your question. It's also not an easy one because we had the same experiences in terms of seeing all the value that is inherent in international online collaboration, but also seeing the wish, the need to meet personally. And that was also feedback some students gave to us in our design-based research study, where they said, I would have preferred to having it face-to-face, but we see the value because the group was then much bigger, because we could reach many more students than initially planned with the virtual setting. And coming back to your question, what should we do to make this a little bit more popular, maybe? I have no idea. I think it needs a mix between both. I personally would appreciate if more congresses would be virtually because they would allow so many more participants to join. But of course, I think sometimes the value is meeting international colleagues you haven't met over a long time. And I think therefore it's always the balance of making a decision, what do I want to promote more? And I think I would go for 1 year virtual, 1 year in presence for many conferences to allow the diversity and the advantages of both settings to happen.
Yeah, that's a nice pragmatic way to address this, indeed. And the same strikes me with my students. So living in Frankfurt is like in Maastricht, costs quite something. And a lot of students struggle with this and they want to participate online as much as they can. And I'm wondering, we are beyond COVID-19, so we can do presence again. Why you don't come to my lecture hall? And also there we see these mixed feelings and different motivations than for the conferences. And it's really difficult to find for these different opportunities the right mix.
I absolutely agree.
I would continue then with one of the other topics that I'm researching is the role of AI. And although I appreciate to see a thesis that is not on AI, the question is, I guess it has an impact on your IOCC framework because you have information and communication technologies and data in your framework.
Yes.
But you don't mention AI and the role of this. And the power of AI is that it can transcribe meetings while they're happening, translate it to all languages. It can summarize the information. It can tell us the information that we probably could have discussed, but we did not. So there's a lot of things that affects your current studies, basically, and ask for a position or an adjustment. How you see this in your framework and in your thesis as large.
Yeah, thank you. One point of the areas of future directions of studies was the generational aspects, that we need to check if the framework is still valid in 10 years or even in 2 years with all the different technologies that come up, but also with the people, if they are more, or as future students, if they are more capable of handling all these things. In general, I do think that could be an advantage, but also a disadvantage. The technological domain we described very, very widely. So we did not mention specific tools. We mentioned using technology wisely and effectively and responsibly, making it possible to integrate AI in a deeper way while you apply it, the framework in different learning and instructions. What I still do think is, as you mentioned, AI can help in opening up topics that interprofessional or international teams could need to discuss, but they still need to collaborate, achieve a decision that cannot be done by AI. So whereas I think that AI could bring a lot of value to international online collaboration, I think it won't, but that's what I say now, maybe in 2 years it's different, I think it won't change the concept of international online collaboration as such, because the communicative, collaborative, management tasks, language issues, that's not what AI can really make up for in the collaboration itself. I think it can be a great substitute, but I think it won't replace any of the aspects that we covered so far.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think I have a little question left or no question left? No left. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Daxler. The next opponent is Professor Saskia Brandt. She is Professor of Design of Personalized Learning at Zuid University of Applied Sciences and Maastricht University. Professor Brandt.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. Esteemed candidates, first of all, I also like to graduate you with your thesis, because it really has an added value for science, but also from a practical point of view. And as a director of the University of Applied Science, I also see a lot of things, because we are also more international. So it helps teachers. I have a question about the chapter concerning the design-based research. And first of all, and just to see if I have it right, you measured the IOCC with 31 items, and you asked the students how comfortable are you with, and then you. But on the page 107, you also say that you measured students' performance using a 5-point Likert scale. Is that on the same? Were that the same items that you asked them? Are you comfortable? And then you had to yeah.
Yes.
What I'm puzzling off is, okay, you say you measured using "Are you comfortable with?" And I have something. If you ask that, what are you really asking? Are you measuring competence? I should say it's more self-efficacy or something like that. So what are you measuring? And also you ask in your 5-point Likert scale, you say, yeah, what did you say? You say it's more relative because you say I'm performing better than the other group members, or what I do hinders. So it's relative. So if you have a group with really high-performing students, then yeah, I can say it hinders, but maybe you are a lot better than when you have a group with really poor-performing students, and then you say, I'm really better. So what do you really measure with your skill? Performance, self-efficacy, and it's also not an objective but more relative measure. So how do you see that?
Yeah, highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your kind words and also for your question. Again, a challenging question. Thank you. We had two, I tried to answer that. We had 2 design cycles, and you were right in the first. We asked about how comfortable do you feel in the competences, and we had the same feeling after we evaluated the results that the stem of the questionnaire is not really that well. So we then adapted it to I'm able to. That was the change, the design change we had from the first design cycle to the second. And this was the scale we really used for the self-perceived competencies, which is, of course, subjective. Yeah. And for the international online collaboration competencies, we did not and still do not have an additional measurement, for instance, from peers or from observers. And that's why I've mentioned this definitely as an area for future research. And the part you were mentioning with I'm a hindrance of the group, or I'm performing better, or poorer, was part of assessing interprofessional behaviors. And that also aligns with your question you had previously, that one major thing to improve would be the evaluation of both interprofessional and interprofessional behaviors, because it's still, I think we are still not there yet. So there, as you pointed out, what are we actually measuring with that? I think it needs definitely more work on getting more to the point.
And in the same study, you also made a comparison between a self-assessment and a peer assessment. And also there I had something, because it was not a question to have an idea about how peers and how self-assessments, but you also do not say something about, okay, but what does the score say? Is scoring a 4 good or bad? Or how can you say something about, okay, I did a self-assessment, but how is my performance?
Yes, yeah. We were discussing that actually, if it makes sense to create a benchmark when I'm sufficiently interprofessionally behaving. The same for IOCCs, when I'm really a good performer in international online collaborations. I don't think that developing a benchmark on it would be so helpful. Actually, I think I would go into the direction of Deerdorf, who developed a competency model for intercultural competencies, where she described the competency development as an iterative process rather than a fixed stage model. And I also see that in this ICOIL. I think I would not go in the direction of getting benchmarks, whereas I see the wish for it from my own experience as a lecturer as well. But I think it would be nice if we could have a longitudinal approach over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years over a program to see how does it change. And if there are self-reflection and debriefs added where facilitators or observers are also integrated, I think putting students in the center of their own behavior development, competency development would be beneficial. Yeah. And that's what I see.
Yeah, and also take teachers' perspective into account. Yeah,
definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Brandt. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Danielle Verstegen. She is Associate Professor of Maastricht University and she is Director of the Master Health Professions Education. And she is also Secretary of this committee. Professor Verstegen.
Thank you for that introduction and congratulations to you and your team. I'll add mine to everybody else's. It's an honor to be here and ask you some questions. My first question would be about your competency framework. It's a huge endeavor to develop one. I know, we've done it ourselves. But I was wondering, looking at your competency framework, there's parts of that framework that are always necessary when you work in a team. Wherever, whenever. There's parts of that framework that are always necessary when you do anything online, individually or in a team. There's parts of it that are always necessary when you work interprofessionally. So what about it is then really specific for this international online collaboration in health professions, would you say?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your question and your kind words. This question was also raised by our reviewers in Study 1 and Study 2. So it's a very valid and important question. And we were, of course, discussing it in our research team as well, whether it makes more sense just defining specific aspects that are added to international collaborations, or coming up with a holistic framework that covers more. And it was a very, I would say, also a pragmatic approach in terms of if you want to assess or evaluate and discuss the whole virtual global team, what kind of aspects would you then need to add due to the specifics that international online collaboration implies? And then it gets complicated because what additional questionnaires do you have to reflect on your management or language communication aspects that are not exactly limited or specific for international collaboration but still relevant? And the pragmatic approach was we look at it holistically to make sure that we don't need 3 or 2 additional questionnaires to assess the whole teamwork in international online environments, but really make sure that this can be a short informative measurement to focus on it rather making it too complex. Because, for instance, for the intercultural Competencies, Dierdorf has already developed a very nice framework on it, but this would add another questionnaire. And so it adds up and you end with 3 questionnaires maybe in the end, and that's what we wanted to prevent for teaching and evaluating because it simply gets too complex.
Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, it's an adding up of those different components.
Yes.
And I noticed that you were doing your intervention in an international environment, but still within the same region of the world.
Yes.
Would that intervention and the questionnaire still be valid if you had a global audience, a far more diverse audience?
Yeah, I hope so. We don't know. We just had the luck to be involved in the European project with the interprofessional aspect that I mentioned before, with 4 European countries, but that's a very westernized approach, of course. And that's definitely an area for future research to check, is this questionnaire, is this framework as such, is the design of the intervention also working if there's a more global team? And I hope that there are researchers who focus on that question because it's a very central question to the whole framework. Yeah.
Maybe that allows me to take a little step to our own context. And I would like to jump to the more kind of your ideas of what we should do as teachers. We run a course where we ask a very international group of students to learn together about learning theories. And we do that by asking them to imagine that they are making a journal issue about a certain learning theory. This is their task. but they are all over the world. They differ in age, in background. They may or may not have met each other before. So this is very international, it's very online. Sometimes these groups have quite a rocky start because they don't know how to collaborate online. What advice would you give to us as teachers to guide them in that process?
Thank you. That's not.
And you may give a short answer.
Wow, that's difficult because there are many aspects where you could focus on. First of all, you could ask yourself if the task is really collaborative or if it allows for coordination. So if students could just arrange, I do this and you do that, and then we mix and mingle together, that's not what we impose with collaboration, and that can happen. So that's one thing, to check the task. If you is it specific enough to focus on the achievement of a shared goal? And second, to guide the development of the virtual global teams. First of all, I would say using the framework as a tool to discuss and share and reflect. What have you done in the past? Have you already collaborated? What kind of experiences did you make? What kind of challenges did you come with? How did you solve the issues? Look at the competencies. Where do you think you might struggle with? And repeat that probably 1 or 2 times, depending on how long the course takes, to make the students reflect, because challenges are important. They are learning opportunity even in this field. But I think using the framework allows to step back from the personal view to a more holistic view and to see the big picture and advantages and personal learning growth it can bring, despite focusing on single competencies that may help overcoming these challenges. That's a short answer. I would have more, but I tried to be brief.
I'm giving back the word to the pro-rector.
Thank you, Dr. Verstegen. The next opponent is Dr. Emmeline Brouwer. She is associate professor at the School of Health Professions Education, and she is also director of the program on collaboration.
Thank you. Dear candidate, I would like to join all the colleagues here in congratulating you and your team on this thesis. And I feel honored to be here today after having been on the PhD journey together for so many years. And I learned a lot from how you balanced lockdowns with babies and PhD work and all those challenges. And I hope to learn more from you today. As you know, the vast majority of my work would probably qualify as international online collaboration. And just last week I was brainstorming with a professor from Ghana on how we could set up a virtual course for students from their ICT college, with maybe medical students from here in Maastricht. We thought how they could meet together in the virtual space and approach a challenge from the Ghanaian health system and maybe one from the Dutch health system. And then I was reading your book and I thought, well, let's bring you on this team as an education advisor. And let's say we are mainly interested to look at these intercultural international competencies. And this maybe allows you to follow up a bit on the previous discussion. When we would start designing this course, what are the do's and the don'ts for us to make sure we allow these students to really develop these competencies?
Yeah, esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your kind words and question. I follow up with the previous question. Again, I repeat it a little bit, check what kind of collaborative goal they could be meaningful for the students, because if it is something where they see the need for collaborating because they need to discuss from different aspects, then it's going to happen. We, in the first design cycle, for instance, just discussed assessment data and discussed what is missing and what you would like to have further. And that was not concrete enough to really make them collaborate. So I think I would focus on the task first, making sure with your colleagues from Ghana to check what could be a heart of the collaboration, and then everything goes a little bit more smoothly. And second, what kind of design you would like them to work in? Is it a combination of asynchronous and synchronous? How much meetings do you want to facilitate to enable that? Because sometimes the students need support by facilitators in the process, and it makes sense if every group has a facilitator that they can approach regularly to do debriefings on what works well or what does not, so that you get a good picture. You did already, right?
Working on it. No, the follow-up is that helps a lot in making sure the collaboration is meaningful, I think, and the learning is structured, facilitated. Any specific for this intercultural development, the international skills or the sub-competencies in your skill, how to stimulate those?
Yeah, I would say by bringing it up regularly as a central question, because my experience in interprofessional collaboration was that you happen to observe differences, but you never mention it really or bring it up. And that's, I think, a missed opportunity, because if you give students a chance to discuss what they have observed, what was beneficial to contribute to reaching a shared goal, and what was hindering, and how did that work, and how did they overcome it probably, or could overcome the limitations that they observed, I think that would be a very in-depth learning that I would always have wished to have.
Cool, nice. Now let's assume I bring my other colleagues from Vietnam to the table. They have a really wonderful course in public health. So I think that could, from the content perspective, bring nice added value. It also brings new complications, because here we are transcending time as well, beyond only space and culture. And now I would like to invite you again to the table, but with your researcher hat and your PhD that you have just acquired. If I give you this context, 3 countries, different time zones, different cultures, different professions, and a common global health learning task, what would be your dream research question to explore in that context, and how?
Very nice. Also difficult. What would be my research question for this context? Difficult. It's really difficult. I mean, in general, so not easy to answer. So the focus is still to develop something together between the 3 countries, right? That would be still a cornerstone. Then I probably would like to see if the initially planned instructional design you had, if that's how it can be integrated in a balanced way to make sure that the students still can meet in synchronous meetings, to overcome an imbalance between some students probably meeting more often, whereas the others can't participate due to time differences, so that they come up, either they come up or you give it, to reach a balance in meeting times, if that works. And probably a nice research question could also be how these different cultures see this framework, if there are a lot of if we missed something, because this country, also the African countries, we did not involve at all. So I would probably personally check if the framework is still valid and reliable in this given context. As of my research procedure, I would choose that.
Thank you. I give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you, Professor Brouwer. The 6th and last opponent is Professor Juliette Beuken. She is assistant professor at the School of Health Professions Education. That's it.
That's it, indeed. Thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidates, what an honor to be able to exchange thoughts again with you over your thesis. I'll keep my congratulations short, as you already know how impressed I am with what you and your team achieved, and especially with your ability to go through a full design-based research cycle with an international learning activity. Luckily, it's the kind of thesis for which, and please consider this another compliment, I don't easily run out of questions. And I still have a couple up this very big sleeve. I wanted to start off with a question about the paradigms. In both your introduction and in your discussion, you write very transparently about these paradigms, emphasis on the S because it's multiple. You describe that you take a post-positivist stance towards your research questions, aiming to approximate the truest insight into the competencies for IOCs. And thereafter, you also describe your social constructivist paradigm on education. After all, in these IOCs, you must learn together, and they might not all learn the same thing. Mm-hmm. And these two paradigms, to me, don't feel like an ideal match. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how you combine these in your research, and if you have examples of these paradigms clashing or combining very nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your compliments. And the question, again, a challenging question. Not easy to answer, but I will try to be brief. So to me, the post-positivist stance we had fits really nicely to the design-based research because it's very context-specific. You can't transfer it that easily, meaning that we naturally need to know that we are not there yet. We do not know everything. So our design-based research study was a first approach to understand how we learn, teach, and evaluate IOCCs really in the given context. So also with applying mixed methods, it still fits to me really nicely to both the post-positivist stance to make triangulation as possible as possible. Sorry, can't say that better. Additionally, the social constructivist stance also fits to me really nicely into the research topics or research theme, because the heart of my research is really the collaborative culture, the aspects where people come together to share and create the knowledge and expertise, which is one thing that implies social constructivism. So I think, even though it was not easy to get the whole picture of the combination of paradigms, at the very end I thought it's the perfect match to me. So looking at it from different perspectives with all the paradigms worked really well. Not sure if that answers your question, but that's how I see it.
And that's the thing with paradigms, right?
Yes.
You can see it how you see it. Has it changed over time, the way in which you look at the problem that you researched and your approach to it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would say definitely yes, probably not in terms of I approach it as such, but in terms of what I would like to do additionally, knowing everything that we know by now. Because we started not knowing what competencies are involved, we started not knowing how we could teach and learn it, and third, evaluate it. So I think we made a first step in further understanding international online collaboration and the competencies it involved. But I see limitations as well, such as we did not have the global context, so we do not know if the framework is really applicable in any given context. That's an assumption we make. We do not know of if the training, how we designed it, really contributed as best option as possible. Maybe we could have designed it differently. Integrating a 360-degree evaluation or multi-source feedback would have promoted probably a better understanding of the competencies as such. So I do see a lot of more to-dos. But in looking back, I think we made good decisions and wise decisions as we approached the topic from scratch.
Yeah, I think you really used the strength of the differences in your team very well and practicing what you preach, really. I also feel the pressure of time, and I have one last question that I wanted to ask. You mentioned in your discussion, and actually also with the discussion with Professor Drasler, that the digital world in which we operate, and with all the new tools coming in, as well as the people that operate in this digital world, are constantly changing. And you also mentioned somewhere in the thesis that updates will be required. And with that, the competencies that you need for IOC will change as well, right? So what updates do you think that your framework will require in the near future?
Yeah, thank you. Probably, I think that was an idea I had. If we validate or approach different contexts, like Africa, Taiwan, I think you mentioned, and test the questionnaire, the framework there, I'm not so sure if we would move into a more specific direction in terms of, as we already discussed, it is a rather holistic approach. So what I would think could change is that the given competencies would probably turn into more specific for the virtual collaboration. So I think we did well in checking what the literature says and in checking what the expert says. But at the end, we need to ask what students say, and if the competencies are specific enough, that's a question to be answered.
Mrs. Kolm, as you have heard and seen, the time for defending your thesis has passed. Committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis, and in particular the quality of your defense. And please await our return here.
Yes, thank you.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. On the line, I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Take the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you've won the battle once you've grown. Southside, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile a night. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile a night. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. 'Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Mrs. Kolm, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and in particular the quality of your defense. And in view of its positive verdict, and also taking into account the previous qualifications that you have obtained.
Sorry.
The degree committee has decided to grant you the doctorate. Professor De Nooijen is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom and law. I invite now your supervisor to take the floor. Professor De Nooijen.
Thank you. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent and responsible?
I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Alexandra Kolm, the degree of doctor and grant you all the rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with a degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university.
It's a very unique moment.
It is.
It is, yeah.
Dear Dr. Kolm, dear Alexandra, after 8 years of hard work and a fantastic defense, you have now more than deserved your title. Congratulations, Alexandra, also from Janneke. We are super proud of you, and no doubt Jeroen would have been too. Now you can relax and enjoy the rest of the day. And that's very well deserved. But before we are going to celebrate this achievement, this is also a moment for a brief reflection on how you ended up as Dr. Kolm. It all started with a PhD writing course in 2017. That's 8 years ago, and that's a pretty long time. To take a look back on what you have now and didn't have back then. A PhD degree, of course, but also 2 kids and also some grey hairs. Do these grey hairs come from the PhD trajectory or from your kids? I'll leave it up to you to decide on this. The 2 times you were in Maastricht were one of the few times we saw each other in person. Once you were admitted to SHE, your PhD trajectory began, and with that, the international online collaboration between us. Not only was it the topic of your research, but also we had to work together, because Vienna is 1,000 kilometers from Maastricht, and luckily in the same time zone. Did we practice what we preached? To answer that question, I would like to take you and your loved ones here and via the live stream just for a moment through the framework that you developed, to ensure that also your audience understand what you did in lay terms. So I'm going to explain it a little bit again in my own words. And if my explanation is not clear for someone, I can still refer to the book. So along the way, we also developed our own competencies in international online collaboration, and I'd like to share some striking things with you. First, our ICT skills. You already referred to that. We started in pre-COVID times. There was no Zoom nor Teams, but we had Skype. Skype had a business version that enabled online collaboration from more than 2 computers, but somehow it never worked. Therefore, for our meetings, I went to Jeroen's room, where we were sitting with the ordinary Skype, and you on his screen, and your documents on my screen. But even after we started using Zoom and later Teams, it still happened quite often that the technology didn't work, or someone was talking who appeared to be on mute. Later, some people have cats walking in the meeting, but you had Francisca occasionally playing in the background. And I also remember one time during our discussion that you had Theodore on your lap and were feeding him out of sight in the meantime. So we only saw your head on top of the screen. Then our international and intercultural competencies. Our interest in each other's culture was often evident through the exchange of the situation around COVID in our respective countries at the beginning of our meetings. But these talks never took long. That changed when Janneke joined our team. 3 women in academia with kids, we had a lot to share and to deal with. It created a bond between us and definitely a positive atmosphere. And although it's not explicitly reflected in your framework, I think the in-person meetings in Basel and the year after in Vienna, with little Francisca only a few months old, helped enormously in getting to know and appreciate each other. From the beginning, the communication and language skills were very efficient in our team. You prepared us well for our meetings, you wrote clearly, and you have just shown us that you can also present your work well in front of a mixed audience. Collaborative competences, when I look back, is one of your highly developed sides. You're always open to feedback to improve your work, even when one of the reviewers wanted you to refer to themselves several times before your paper was accepted for publication. We never saw this before, but you incorporated the feedback with a smile and with the publication as a reward. Management and organizational skills. It's remarkable how many balls you keep in the air at the same time. Not only your research, but in the beginning you still worked at the university. You published a lot outside our research area, including a book and several papers. And you're a managing partner of your hotel in Vienna, and that's only on the professional level. So finally, the domain-specific competences. It was clear that in the beginning, Jeroen's knowledge was very important to shape the project, which led to inspiring and sometimes funny discussions. I remember that we spent 1 hour talking about the difference between competence and competency, and another time whether the framework should get the shape of a flower or a wheel. I'm sure that Jeroen would have been very satisfied with the result. Later on, you became the true expert, due to your thorough and accurate work on the development of the framework, and especially with respect to the validation study. So, while conducting these studies on IOCCs, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Our team, with Jeroen and Janneke, collaborated very well in an international online context. Unfortunately, we are not yet ready, because there are still 2 papers that are submitted to journals. Hopefully, we get them accepted this year. Dear Alexandra, you brought this to a fantastic end, in between taking care of your kids and all that comes with that. That deserves heartfelt congratulations from both of us. We would also like to congratulate your husband Gerald, your kids, your friends here in the aula, and especially your parents who are following this ceremony from home. You can be very proud of what Alexandra achieved, but more for who she is. Alexandra, it was a real pleasure working with you over the past 8 years. We are going to miss that, but we are sure we will stay in touch. We wish you a very nice day today, and for tomorrow, when you wake up, we hope that your first thought is, yes, I did it.
Esteemed Dr. Kolm, dear Alexandra, yes. It's my great pleasure to congratulate you with your doctorate, and I do that also on behalf of Maastricht University. And I would like to share some impressions of the committee with you. We have heard a very clear summary of what you did in your studies a couple of years ago, since a couple of years. And I think it also matches the aim of this summary because it's meant for non-experts in the field. And I think that most people that have heard and seen your presentation understand what you did in the last couple of years. Your thesis was easy to read. We have critically read it, and it was well structured. It has also a beautiful cover, and it showed various designs of research. With respect to your defense, I would like to combine that in a number of keywords. It was very clear, it was honest, it was constructive, it was also relaxed, it was balanced, transparent, coherent, and systematic. And I think you have clearly shown that you are very knowledgeable in your field of studies, so we are very satisfied with your defense. I do not only congratulate you with this result, but also your supervisors. Unfortunately, we miss Professor Jeroen van Merienboer, but you both are here, and Professor Jascha de Nooijer and Dr. Janneke Frambach. Congratulations with these results, with the thesis, with the publications, and with a very good defense. I would like to include in my congratulations also your family, your husband, your 2 children, which probably do not know exactly what's going on. But I would like to congratulate indeed your family and also your parents, and I hope that I have seen you defending your thesis, other members of the family, and also colleagues and friends and other people that have seen your defense today. I would like to thank both committees, not only this degree committee, but also the thesis assessment committee. Thank you very much for critically reading the manuscript and having also critical questions and a very good academic discussion that we have seen today. So thank you very much. And also thank you in particular the external members of the committee and also for your input in both committees. Before I close this ceremony, I would like to invite you for the reception, which is in the rafter. And with the committee, we will take a picture with you in the middle in the hall, on the stairs in the hall. And then we will meet the audience in the rafter. You can find the rafter quite easily because it's when you go to the elevator and make a turn right, you find easily the place of the reception. Hereby I close this academic ceremony at Maastricht University. I think your parents will carry your role.